Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
John, I told you we're going to move on from one thing, but there's one other story I highlighted this morning. There's the story about Dr. Jill being on the cover of Vogue magazine. Have you seen this story?
Oh, yes. How about it?
This is so bizarre. I mean, and supposedly, you know, talking about having access, one of the editors from Vogue called her at Camp David on Sunday to get a refresh quote on something about the debate and the whole bit. And what's interesting about it is this is the fourth time that Jill Biden has been on the cover of Vogue magazine. And Melania Trump, you know how many times Melania Trump was on the front page of Vogue magazine or anywhere in Vogue magazine in 4 years of her being first lady? Guess what, John?
To quote Dean Wormer, 0.0.
Yes. I mean, it's just bizarre.
And now let me say real quick, though, if you go to the link that I have up today where Austin Peterson had a conversation with Will Scharf, our friend Camelia Peterson shared her thoughts on the Vogue cover and Vogue's relationship with Jill Biden on Austin's show as well. You can find that on that Austin Peterson link.
I can imagine what Camelia would say.
You know, she's generally on the right side of things, Brad. I mean, there's a few things that, you know, I would quibble with her on. But you know what? When it comes to cultural issues, she's usually spot on.
Okay. Next thing we'll talk about, I will say to a certain extent, and I don't want to betray my source because in the last week I've had a couple sort of off-the-record conversations. I told you last week I had about a 45-minute telephone conversation with someone who's running for a state office. Now, you can probably try to figure out who that is, but it was very, 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 very interesting, where it's interesting in the respect that I learned a lot from this person, and what was interesting was this person complimented me, not that I'm trying to puff out my chest or anything, because I gave this person an insight that he didn't really even consider as far as me being what I do in the media and things like that. Okay, having said that, explain to me what the hell is going on with this crazy situation with the presidential delegates where they've thrown out not only Jay Ashcroft but Bill Eigel. John, explain this crazy thing to me.
Yeah, so for folks who, if this is your first time hearing about this, you can go to yesterday's show in the A block. That was episode 149, and we talked about it in A block. And in short, Brad, as I mentioned yesterday, at the state convention on May 4th, slates of delegates were elected to represent Missouri at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. So this happens every 4 years. A slate is elected and then gets to go to the National Convention. As I understand it, the two sides of the story are the so-called establishment, the Republican establishment of the folks in the Missouri Republican Party would say that the folks that got elected, that slate that got elected, did not fill out their paperwork properly, did not fill out a complete list of delegates, did not have their delegates credentialed properly before sending them to the state party. I believe that's the state party's argument, or the quote-unquote establishment's argument, the regular Republicans' argument. The argument that that essentially the what they call themselves truly grassroots for Trump, and that's led by Sophie Shore and some other folks who were close to Bill Eigel, would say that they had all the paperwork they needed, they had all the credentials that they needed, and that the state party failed to submit the paperwork properly to the national group. So as it stands, as I mentioned yesterday in segment A, in A block, that the state party has until Friday to get a list of delegates to the Republican National Convention. So in other words, here's the conundrum, Brad. Do folks who run the state party, do they submit their own slate of delegates, their own slate of favored people to go to Milwaukee to be delegates? Or do they stay true to what happened at the state convention and submit a lot of those folks that were duly elected at the convention to go? Now, that's what I would consider, Brad, I don't feel like I have a dog in this fight. I think that that's a pretty accurate and objective portrayal of what has happened in the last 2 months.
Now, and once again, the state convention, which we talked about weeks ago, was down in Springfield, and that was interesting because you say there was hardly any press or no press there whatsoever, correct? Wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't believe anybody was there actually covering it. Now, there was residual coverage afterwards, but, and again, Brad, if something happens on a weekend, you can't expect a member of the Missouri press corps to actually cover it.
Well, hold on a minute. STLPR.org, if it was on Saturday, Sunday, man, they would have all 28 reporters working it, don't you think?
Yeah, Kevin Killeen would be right there with his microphone.
He's old school. He doesn't work in the media anymore. Well, he actually works on the other side of the media. Okay.
But go ahead. So what did you hear about it, Brad? Well, what was I'm presuming that the person that you talked to was on the quote-unquote other side.
Okay, a couple different things. First off, the thing that hit yesterday, which was sort of a big news story, was the fact that they kicked both Eigel and Ashcroft off as delegates, okay? Which is like, okay, you've got 2/3 of the Republicans running for the Republican primary in August. Doesn't that give Mike Kehoe a little bit of a elevated stance, because he can say, well, look, at the Republicans kicked Eigel and Ashcroft off the delegation. They approved of me. Doesn't that give him a little bit of cred, so to speak?
Now, are you being sarcastic or serious?
No, I'm being serious.
Yeah, absolutely not. And so a lot of these spots on the delegate list, Brad, are filled by folks who are longtime elected officials. I'm presuming at some point, I don't know this, but I'm presuming at some point Mike Kehoe has been a delegate to the National Convention. If he hasn't, he could have that slot whenever he wanted to be. And it is quite an honor to be a delegate to the National Convention. But the fact that Bill Eigel and Jay Ashcroft were on the delegate list, that's symbolic, Brad. Like, I wouldn't read too much into that. It's the same thing as if someone had been a longtime county Republican chair for a long time, or a venerated committee person, or even a state rep that really made the argument, hey, I want to go to a national convention. I really want to go. I wouldn't read anything whatsoever into Eigel and Ashcroft being kicked off a delegate list.
Okay, but John, here's where you and I are going to differ. And you and I differ a lot on this. And it's interesting because it seems as though when you and I sort of go toe to toe, we get a lot of feedback on Twitter. People go like, I can't believe, they'll play. I see comments like, it's hard for me to say this, but I agree with Brad. I'm going like, wow, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is. So what's your take on this, Brad?
Okay. I'm the campaign manager for Mike Kehoe. Just for a minute. I'm Rudy Kaparsowitz, whatever his name is, okay? I'm the campaign manager. And after I see this thing hit, the news stories that Eigel and Ashcroft get kicked off the delegation, I sit down at my computer and I draft a new ad. 2 guys who claimed to be Republicans were thrown out of the Republican delegation to the Republican National Convention. Yes, 2 people who claim they're Republicans, Jay Ashcroft and Bill Eigel, were kicked to the curb. But who wasn't? Mike Kehoe. Because what is Mike Kehoe? He is a true Republican. Unlike Ashcroft and Eigel, who got kicked out of the delegation because they're not true Republicans, Mike Kehoe is the truest Republican. Vote for Mike Kehoe for governor August 6th. That's what I'd be doing.
And you know what? And I know that maybe a portion of your tongue is planted in cheek, but people don't care about party committee votes. People don't even understand how the delegate selection process. Most people who identify as Republicans or even Republican primary voters have no idea where the National Convention is. They don't understand the delegate process. And there's nobody that suggests or that would think that Jay Ashcroft, who has a last name, by the way, Ashcroft, isn't a real Republican, and nobody would think that Bill Eigel wasn't a real Republican. And in fact, Brad, I think that Mike Kehoe will be spending his money probably pretty effectively, and wouldn't be to steal a line from the group TLC. Mike Kehoe is not going to be chasing waterfalls. He's going to stick to the rivers and the lakes that he's used to.
God, John, you just wind those top 40 references out like that so easily. Okay, here's where I disagree with you, because I bet you if I turned on to non-Rhino Radio, which is Tracy Ellis's station.
Number 2. We got a number 2 reference, Brad.
Any money, there's somebody in there right now go, well, that Jay Ashcroft, he's a rhino. Don't vote for Jay or Ashcroft. He's a rhino. So you just meant in the comment nobody would say Jay Ashcroft isn't a true Republican. Yeah, the people at 93.3 would be calling him Rhino, 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 Rhino. He's got a horn that's so long because he's a super rhino.
Yeah, and you know what? That is a portion. That is a single-digit percentage of Republican primary voters. You're right, Brad. And then there's also an octogenarian in West Plains who hasn't changed their underwear in 30 years, who's going to go to the polling place, who thinks that Governor John Ashcroft is running for governor again and will tick the Ashcroft box because she loves that guy that's saying, let the eagle soar.
And she loves the guy because he put a top on the topless lady at the DOJ building in D.C., right?
Yeah, which is quite the opposite of what you did in Sauget. You would undress the topless lady, Brad, but John Ashcroft would cover up the woman's boob. Can we say boob?
Yeah, well, no, we can't.
Her mammaries. She covered up her mammaries.
We can't say that. Okay. Now, one other thing. I have two more things. We're going to finish the thing off with what was sent to me yesterday about you, John. Okay, explain to me the outcome of this court case involving the Vernon County thing. I read the article 3 times. I thought to myself, okay, I still don't know what the hell happened. Okay, long story made short, Vernon County's 12,000 people. There's been controversy. There's actually a pretty interesting article, if you go back in the archives of Riverfront Times, talk about how the Republican committee in Vernon County, it's only, I think, 13,000 people. It's in southwest Missouri. It's on the border with Kansas. And essentially, there's a bunch of people in this church, which is interesting. The church is the Israel Temple of God or something like that, some weird church like that. And it's not as good as God Squad, but almost as good. Anyway, the Republican committee is made up of all these people who've been deemed to be very super right wing. They came out with this essentially what people are calling a purity test. They got taken to court. Our own buddy Mark McCloskey went and testified in favor of what they were doing. It got appealed in Kansas City, and the judge essentially came out and said, don't know what to say. Isn't that essentially what the judge came out and said?
Yeah, and forgive that music that just played because I just pulled up the KCTV's story on that, which thanks to you, Brad, I added to the website in real time last Thursday. Yeah, as it appears now, the candidates who did not pass the vetting process remain on the August ballot. And let's not forget that absentee voting has already started, I believe.
Well,
so I think you and I were both really surprised that the vetting process was held up in court.
Well, the whole thing came down to, and we had Mark McCloskey on the air, and quite honestly, I was somewhat surprised at his stance because he is pro-vetting. Now, let's be honest. I like Mark. I think he's an interesting guy, but to me, he's a guy that if I were saying, okay, who's on and who's off the ballot, and if I were one of these pro-vetting people, I go, not that Mark McCluskey guy. We don't want him. We don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
And yet he's the guy that's saying, yeah, we need this vetting. When there's a chance that if he were on the ballot in some of these counties, they go, we don't like that Mark McCluskey guy. We think he sends bad messages, him and his wife. They would throw them off. And that's essentially what's happened. It's a small number, 6 counties in the entire state, 114 counties. But the closest one to us is Franklin County.
And Franklin County has come out, very strongly in support of having a vetting process. And, Mark McCluskey has made the argument here on this show, Brad, when you had him on, of the idea of that it's not too much to ask Republicans to have to support the Republican platform. To me, and my argument against this has been and has always been, that's fine in many counties. Like, I get it, and to be frank, people who agree with me ideologically, or I should say who I agree with ideologically, are generally running these processes now, so that's fine for me. But what if the Boone County in Columbia or the St. Louis City Republicans decide, you know what? We're only going to support candidates that support LGBTQIA participation in female athletics. And then you're a conservative Republican running and they say, sorry, you don't fit our tolerant mold. Well, I would have no recourse then, would I, Brad?
No, I see. Once again, I think this whole thing of which is dividing the party. I said the other day that the Republicans should get together, and join in unity. I just got a text from the person who I can't give their name out in the air because of the fact that I told this person I would not. But it says also, it's not that they did not pass the vetting, as John said, they chose not to take it. which I would think
Oh, wow. Okay, so they chose to not even fill out the candidate survey. Okay, well, thank you for that correction.
Right. Okay, so that's the deal. Okay, so once again, there's crazy stuff going on. There's crazy stuff. If you know what's going on in St. Charles County with the Republican Central Committee, they're trying to. It's just weird. I mean, some of this stuff, it's to the point I'm just like shaking my head, going like, okay, things are really nice in St. Charles County. We got a good, despite what you may disagree with some of these people, we got a good group of, I think Steve Ellman's done a great job as county executive. I think the county council, for the most part, has done some very good things for St. Charles County. I know several of the mayors in St. Charles County. I know Dan Borgmeyer and Nick Guccione and Len Pagano. I know these people, and I think that in their hearts, they're really trying hard to make a great area, great community. But do I agree with everything they do? No. But by the same token, I'm not going to torpedo them. Well, Mayor Pagano has those laser cut St. Peter's images on Mexico Road, so I'm going to vote against him. I don't agree with them.
I do get it, but Brad, also go further east and look at St. Louis City and look at the fact that you have a lot of folks that agree with each other ideologically. You could be a white liberal woman in Tower Grove South. You could be a black woman in North St. Louis City, and you have a whole lot in common in your worldview. And then when it comes time for a mayoral election and power and money and contracts and a whole world of wealth are before you, suddenly that woman in Tower Grove South doesn't really like that black woman in North City because we want that money for ourselves. We want the contracts. We want the consulting money. And so it's a battle over power, Brad.
Okay, last thing in the show. Yesterday after I got out of the air, I got a email from a listener to the show who is not a big John Combest fan. Quite honestly.
Oh, that's great. Now, I hope this criticism isn't lamer than the last one, Brad. Go ahead.
The title of the article, this is from the Today Show, and the title of the article is New Season, New Shoes. Shop 8 expert love summer shoe styles from New Balance to Steve Madden. And this is by Chrissy Callahan, Shannon Carlin, and Madison San Miguel.
Ooh, nice.
New season, new shoes. We've been waiting all year to kick back and enjoy some fun in the sun, and we plan to do it in style with some of these year's hottest summer shoe trends. If you're looking to branch out from your typical flip-flops, you're in luck. There's a variety of options out there that can help you feel comfortable and stylish all season long, and the key word there is comfortable. Luckily for us, today, contributor and Peloton instructor Allie Love recently shared with Today her favorite cute and comfy shoe trends for every summer occasion. Whether you're looking to stay comfy during your summer travels or need a new heel to hit the town, she has options from popular brands we will know you'll love. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's the takeaway, John. The takeaway is
I'm ready.
The shoes they should have, as far as comfy shoes are concerned, they should draw attention to the toe and not the heel.
Ooh, because they have disgusting cracked heels because it's about in the same condition as their other regions.
No, because the you're the heel guy, because to you, if a woman is wearing comfy shoes, which essentially she's wearing flats or what?
Yeah, she's lazy. She's a little more missionary than cowgirl. Go ahead.
What do they call them? Baby Janes, or what's the term?
Mary Janes.
Mary Janes. Janes.
I love a good pair. I knew it. Never mind.
Okay. Which are essentially no heel to them at all. Okay, so how do you keep the man's eye from saying, like John, well, she's got flats on, she has no heels? How do you keep the man's eyes away from the heels and how many inches that heel is? You concentrate on the toes, and what you do is you put like a big bow there, or you put
boy, men sure notice details on a woman's toe. That's definitely the first 10 places our eyes are going to go. Brad, I just went to the Today Show link here. Agnes sent it to me, too. And it also includes a coupon for Maidenform granny panties and a coupon to Lane Bryant.
My favorite shoe is the Hattie Fluff slip-on sandal, okay? Here we go. Bold colors are key in summer, and I especially love a unique shoe with a bit of wow factor, exclaims Love. The star of the show is evidently the fluffy statement at the top of the toe, which also adorns the bold metallic silhouette. And this is a, hot pink shoe, which has a big, looks like, what was those things we had as kids? We had maybe I was a different generation than you, but you had the little furry things that were not, were you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea. I thought your generation played with sticks, Brad. And I thought you guys had 2 cans and a string between them.
No, what we do, we killed dinosaurs so we could play with their bones. That's what we did. That's what my generation did.
Well, this is a great piece about comfortable shoes. I love that, Brad. And thank you, Agnes, for sending this.
I never said it was from Agnes. So
Okay.
Okay, John. I did this.
I got to get to Lane Bryant. There's a sale on granny panties at Maidenform.
I did this once with Shelly, and I said to her, Shelly, are we doing the show anymore? And she says no, and that was the end of that show. Okay.
I was listening live. I called in. I texted you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
But we're going to be here on Friday, right, Brad? Are you good for Friday?
I was just going to say, John, do we do Friday? Because
I'd be happy to do Friday.
Everybody else is taking a week off, and remember, we've got Joe Biden who's back at Camp David for another 3 weeks or something like that. He's got a
Brad,
rest.
I'm a guy that other people's actions don't dictate my actions. And I would like to do a show Friday, so let's do a show Friday.
Joe Biden's going to go back to Camp David and rest until the September, debate, and then he's going to say, "Well, I didn't do well in that September debate because of the fact that I had too much time at Camp David. Out there in the wilderness, your mind just sort of goes to mush.
I almost fell asleep.
Right, I almost fell. Can't believe he said that. Isn't that unbelievable? Okay,
it's remarkable. Hey, happy Independence Day, everybody.
Say goodbye, John.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?